And so to me, that did carry a lot of guilt, some shame, some heartache. I felt a bit burdened by that, watching my wife go through all these procedures, all the anxiety, all the depression, all the emotional heartbreak. Was it all just because she had chosen to be with me and was still choosing to be with me, even though she was going through all this, which meant a lot to me? But yeah, as the male partner who's the cause of all this, carries a lot of guilt seeing your partner go through all that. And did I feel that was addressed or listened to or supported through the clinics or society or communities? Not at all.
Hi, superhumans. I'm Dr. Mavis Garcia.
And I'm Dr. Wise.
We're two of the physician leaders at Markham Fertility Center, otherwise known as Our Baby, MFC.
As fertility specialists, we've witnessed firsthand the challenges, triumphs, and the myriad of emotions that come with trying to conceive. Whether you're just starting to think about having a baby, actively trying, or facing challenges along the way, My Fertility Podcast will be your go-to resource for honest conversations and a supportive community.
So grab a cup of coffee or tea and settle in, and let's demystify the world of fertility together.
Today on My Fertility Podcast, we are welcoming our guest, Tom Riley. He's going to be sharing with us how he helps support his wife during her fertility journey and now continuing on to their pregnancy journey. You can connect with Tom on Instagram at partner_in_fertility. As we navigate today's episode, you're going to hear us using the terms men and women while discussing partners and their roles in the fertility journey. These terms are reflective of Tom and his partner's personal journey, but of course, we want to acknowledge that gender and family dynamics are beautifully diverse. Our intention is not to be exclusive or dismiss other genders, identities, pronouns, or other people's journeys. We know that fertility journeys come in many different forms, and our aim with this podcast is to offer insights and support that resonate universally.
Thank you so much, Tom, for being here today, and welcome to My Fertility Podcast. Now, I have a confession to make. I'm actually quite nervous about this episode. Even though I do a lot of podcast recording, this one has me a little bit anxious, and I'm going to tell you why. So many years ago, I had this lovely couple who were able to conceive with me. They had two beautiful children. And at the time, there was a feedback form at the clinic that they fill out and said many wonderful things about me and my care. They were very, very grateful. However, at the very last line of that feedback form, the male partner wrote something along the lines of, Dr. Garcia was great. We're so thankful to her, but I did feel ignored by her during our journey. I was there for all the appointments, and I felt like she always talked to my wife and ignored me. And I have to tell you, that was probably about 8 or 9 years ago, and I still remember it. And it really hit me hard because it was true. Because I think that this couple that I was working with and work hard for, I think it was absolutely true that I directed a lot of my attention to the female partner. And of course, I'm a gynecologist. I'm very comfortable around women. And I'm also very touchy feely. So I love giving my patients hugs and holding their hands and complimenting them on their hair or whatever it is. And for that reason, I tend to resonate more with the female partners than the male partners. I'm glad that you're here because I want to do better. I think this is something that is not unique to me. There are many fertility specialists who may feel the same way, and I'm sure there's many men out there who might also feel the same way. For example, when you guys came to the clinic and Alexi finally had that viability ultrasound that everything was okay, I remember I rushed to you guys as you were leaving at the elevator, and I gave Alexi a big hug, and she cried on my shoulder and I cried, and it was a very tender moment between the two of us. But I remember that we just standing there in silence, and I felt kind of awkward. I don't even remember if I gave you a hug or not. It felt kind of weird to do that. I actually think I did. But the point is that I want to learn from you. I want to support my patients better. And I think other fertility specialists at fertility clinics can learn how to support the male partner better in this very tough journey that really involves both of you.
That sounds fantastic. You were great in our treatments. I did feel, you did pay attention to me and listen to my questions. That was fantastic. And I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, as Dr. Garcia alluded to, there were lots of tears of joy with your fertility story, but take us back to the beginning. Take us back to how you got to that point. Can you tell us about your story?
I'd love to. Yes, there were tears of joy recently on our journey, but there are lots of other tears before that on the way. My wife and I have been on the infertility journey for more than 6 years. And although we have had a positive result now, we do still feel like we are on that journey because nothing is guaranteed. But it started, after we got married, we immediately started to try to conceive, and that didn't work. We went for tests. Turned out I have azoospermia, which was obviously a leading cause. And everybody looked at Alexi and said, you're young, you're healthy, we'll fix up this issue with Tom and everything will be great. And so I remember going into our very first transfer at our very first clinic. We've been through several clinics along this journey. And after the transfer, Alexi was like floating on air. That was it. That was the magical moment. Everything's going to be great and fabulous. And that turned out to be not the case at all. We didn't realize at that point how long the journey could be, how complex it could be, how hard it could be, how many different things could be tested for, how many variables were involved. And, it turned out that we both had issues on both sides, is what it looks like. So we went through multiple egg retrievals, multiple IUIs, multiple transfers. We had several losses along the way. Some of those were chemical pregnancies. There was a blighted ovum. There was a fetus that grew for several days, but didn't make it to heartbeat. We went for the heartbeat test and had stopped growing a day or two prior. So Alexi had to come home and we had to deal with that. And all of that was pretty heartbreaking. There were times we wanted to quit. There were times we had to take a break for our own mental and emotional and Lexi's physical health. But then we kept coming to it, coming back. We always had the attitude that we wanted to leave no stone unturned, right? We wanted to try everything. If we had tried absolutely everything we could find and it didn't work, we could live with that. But what we couldn't live with is not trying something and then looking back with regret in 5 or 10 years saying, what if, we had only done that? And then, I have to give kudos to my wife because she was willing to go through all of these procedures and all the heartache and all the pain. And kudos to the clinic we finally finished at after trying several, which was Markham Fertility. And the team there is just fantastic.
Thank you for thinking about my care specifically, but you can be honest about my care or anybody else's care. But in general, we're talking in general. Do you often felt overlooked or misunderstood during your journey? And how did that impact you emotionally, knowing that, yes, it was a male problem? I mean, you mentioned you both have issues, but 90% of the things, the procedures were happening to your partner.
Yeah. And that's hard, I think, for a partner to watch their partner go through all the pain and the heartache. But how did it make me feel having to go through all the procedures? Initially, it was my azoospermia that caused everything. And although it looks like maybe there were some issues on my wife's side, she's also going through unnatural procedures, right? So in the back of my mind was always, is it just not working because she has to go through these unnatural procedures because of my issue? If I could have got her pregnant naturally, maybe we would have been fine, perfect, and nothing bad would happen because she has had undiagnosed infertility. It's not like any clinic has said, yeah, this was the problem. It's been undiagnosed. And so the issue could be, okay, it's medical procedures, right? It's invasive. It's not the normal, natural path that people go through for the average person, I guess. And so to me, that did carry a lot of guilt, some shame, some heartache. I felt a bit burdened by that, watching my wife go through all these procedures, all the anxiety, all the depression, all the emotional heartbreak. Was it all just because she had chosen to be with me and was still choosing to be with me, even though she was going through all this, which meant a lot to me. But yeah, as the male partner who's the cause of all this, carries a lot of guilt seeing your partner go through all that. And did I feel that was addressed or listened to or supported through the clinics? Or society or communities. Not at all. There's not
Not at
much
all.
out there for
Yeah.
men.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
as you know, my wife is very active in social media. She has a great community around her. They support each other. They understand each other. They can vent to each other, let out their emotions to each other. But for the man, there's nothing.
Yeah, you started an account specifically for that, right? You started your own
Yes.
social media account. How is that going? And have you had people reach out to you?
Yeah, I have had some people reach out to me, some male partners just looking to talk, looking maybe to vent, get out some emotion, just some camaraderie, you know. For anybody going through the infertility journey, it's hard to discuss it with people who are outside that journey. Just like anything else, I don't understand what a cancer patient goes through with their treatments because I haven't been through it. Same with IVF. You try and discuss it with friends and family who haven't gone through it, and they say well-intended things, but they can't really understand and grasp it. And so, it seems like the women have developed their own community within the IVF community where they can do that. So for a man, you can't speak to your friends and family about it really because they don't understand. And there's no community within the community for us. So I did start a social media. I've put up some posts. I haven't been that diligent on it recently. Maybe I should do more. But yeah, some people have reached out. I've made some friendships. And it's nice just even to speak with another man who understands what you're talking about.
I think that in addition to the fact that, like I said, most of the procedures happen on women, there is also this expectation on society. We just actually recorded earlier today about that expectation that women are supposed to just get married and get pregnant. At the same time, there is the expectation that men are supposed to be strong and stoic and provide. So now there is the layer of there isn't that much support, there is not that much openness for men, there's not that many resources. Everything's physically it's happening to the female partner. You have doctors like me who are hugging your wife all the time, but they're not hugging you. And then you have this expectation that men are supposed to be strong, but yet you're going through that as well. So how do you manage those expectations and how do you deal with this sort of dual hit, so to speak, that you're going through something hard, but then you're also supposed to be the protector of the person who is going through something hard?
Society has those demands. Men aren't good at expressing their emotions in the first place, right? It's all multi-layered, as you say. And, as the male partner, you do want to help, support, nurture. I wanted to give my wife as much room for her emotions as possible, right? For her to express. So I did keep a lot of mine inside. I buried it, pushed it down. I learned differently later, but especially through the first part of the journey, I really felt that if I started putting out my negative emotions, that puts extra burden on her. Now she's got the weight of her emotions, she's got the weight of the procedures, and now she's got the weight of my emotions on top. And I felt that would be an extra burden to her. So I didn't want to do that. What I learned through the process, however, was that, it is a shared experience we're going through. And part of that is sharing the emotions. When I did open up more and express, yeah, I feel bad too. Yeah, this has crushed me too. This has broken my heart too. It bonded us more. It validated my wife's feelings and showed her that we were on the same page and she wasn't alone. And so it was much more helpful to her than burdening as I thought it would be. Did I still keep a lot inside? Yes. But opening up some and sharing some definitely helped her and helped me and helped our relationship. So that's a key thing I learned along the way.
Mhm. That resonates. I remember when I was going through my journey, my husband, and it's also different for me because I'm a fertility specialist. So it's not like he was going to be Googling things or asking anyone things because I kind of knew the things. And I was going through it at my own clinic. But I remember one very low point in my life, I yell at him and I say, "You're not sad enough about this." We had a conversation afterwards where he was like, "You're the one who's going through this and I want to be there for you and I don't want to burden you with my sadness." Exactly what you said. And yes, after that conversation, he learned, he didn't know, but he learned how healing it would have been for me to see him sad. Because then I know
Yes.
that we're in it together and that his emotions are also present and that I'm not alone in feeling the sadness and the despair. We went through that same circle. Yeah, and it did bring us closer together. Now he knows he's supposed to be angry when I'm angry and sad when I'm sad and happy when I'm happy. Okay?
That's just general good marriage advice.
General marital advice.
Yeah, general marriage advice right
Yeah,
there.
so that helped me a lot and my wife a lot and the relationship a lot. The relationship's always been good. I'm very grateful for that, but that made it even feel better.
Now, as you were talking about your story, you mentioned that you have azoospermia. So, for our listeners, can you tell them what that means, what that entails, and then how that has impacted your fertility journey, your feelings about fertility, and then how society and the cultural norms associated with that?
Certainly. Azoospermia means your little swimmers don't swim. In my case, it's because I had a vasectomy many, many, many years ago. I did get a vasectomy reversal, but that wasn't successful. And, if the little swimmers don't leave the natural way, they don't start swimming, which I didn't know. So it did give me the opportunity to go through some medical procedures. So, I got some as well.
It's empathy training. Yeah.
Got some medical procedures there to get some extractions done. But yeah, as a man, you talk to more men about it and you realize, more men have been in the situation, just like infertility in general. The more you talk about it, the more people you realize had been through it and you have no idea. Being, a man, you want to be manly, just like there's societal pressure on women to give birth, right? To have children. There's societal pressure on men to be the stallion that they can get the job done. And so there was a little bit of grief there for that. That wasn't working the way it should. And then, like I mentioned before, the kind of the guilt that went along with that caused my wife to have to go through 6 years of pain and suffering, going through all the infertility treatments and all the time and all the money. It's not how we're told we're supposed to be by society, right? But I think it's a more common thing than people realize until you start talking about it.
One of the things that I would like you to maybe share or address, one of the things that I find really frustrating as a fertility specialist is when I see women that come to the office, not so much by themselves, but they tell me, oh no, my partner doesn't want to be tested. I just want to be tested myself because I'm pretty sure it's my problem, or, he had a child from another relationship, so it's obviously me. Or even if they are tested, they might still, you have these female partners doing everything under the sun with the supplements and the lifestyle, and men who are like, they don't want to be tested, or they don't want to stop smoking, or they don't want to stop drinking, or they think my sperm is normal, so I don't need to do any of these things. And it frustrates me a lot, to be honest. One of the things that I found really refreshing about you is that you were always there. And it's not so much about physically being there, because some people just cannot with work and things like that. But I knew that Alexi was very supported. Sometimes she came to the appointments alone. Sometimes you guys were together. But I always knew that where you were present and in the background, and she can always count on you. So I found that very refreshing as your doctor. And I wish that more of my female partners that have male partners can have that. So maybe talk to all the men out there. Can you please, Tom? Can you talk to every single one of them and tell them that infertility is a two people problem, that they need to support their partner? So maybe I'll let you speak about how you supported Alexis through your journey and how that made your relationship better.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like there's two aspects there. There's the should I go through treatments, and then there's the support through the journey. I don't understand why a man wouldn't want to get tested. I can understand there might be some societal norms, but this is your relationship and your family. If I asked any man out there, if someone broke into your house, would you put yourself between the intruder and your wife? Yes. Would you take a bullet for your wife? Absolutely. If you had to do whatever to make money for your family, would you do it? Yes. Okay, go get a test. Stop smoking, stop drinking. So your wife might not have to go through 6 years. 6 years or even 4 years or 3 years or one cycle of all these procedures and pain and suffering, like, so many other wives had to go through, bite the little bullet, right? Got to step up and take care of your family if that's happening. As far as supporting Lexi through all the cycles, I always have tried to be as involved as possible any way I could. I completely recognize she's going through way more than I could. So anything else I can do pales in comparison to what she's doing. And I wanted to do as much as possible. So I was all the appointments. I was always driving to and from the appointments. I was in the rooms whenever I could be, even if when it was COVID and I had to wait in the parking lot outside, I was at the appointment, right? Anything she needed. I wanted the rest of her life to be as easy as possible because she had enough to deal with this. So everything around the house was done. All the groceries were done. The cleaning was done. The cooking was done. The bed was made. She never mixed the medication. She never prepared a needle. She never injected a needle. I massaged in the PIO. Anything I could do, I did. I wanted to be as involved as possible. One thing that she really liked came from, our discussions, and she's going through all these procedures and it's invasive, and she's always at the clinic, and she's like, I'm tired of feeling like a patient, and I especially don't want to feel like your patient, right? Because I was doing all the injections. I was making all the medications. It could be a few needles a night, every night, right? The skig. I'd set up the skig and I'd pump her full of the skig. So what we did is, instead of just giving injections, we started, it may sound silly, but we started to call it a needle date. It's time for needle date. I'm going to prepare for needle date, right? So I would go in, I'd set up the room, I'd dim the lights, I'd put on some scented oils, I'd play some relaxing music or nature music. So the bed was all ready. I'd say, okay, go in there. I'm going to go get the needles ready. And she'd go in and lie down. And then I get the massage gun for the PIO and all the needles and all the swabs. And I'd bring it in and we'd have our needle date, which made it a little bit more fun, a little less clinical, right? And then put all that away. If it was PIO time, I'd use a massage gun, much better than using your hands. Really rubs it in there. And then we'd have some snuggle time after.
Nice.
And
Yeah.
then after that, we get up and go watch some TV. So that's something that really helped her feel like less of my patient and made it a bit more enjoyable. It's still needles, still medication. Some of them still burn when they're injected, but trying to make it as nice as possible and be as involved as possible. And that's really made me feel more of a part of the journey. I have been more of a part of the journey. And obviously it's helped our relationship.
I love that. That's such a great idea. I love it so much. Certainly, all the things that you did can go a long way. So thank you so much for sharing that. I love that. The needle date.
The needle date. Yeah. Go say it, try and say it happy. It's needle date instead of, okay, let's go do the injection.
That is fabulous. I guess what I'm really taking away from this, I'm really hearing that although the woman kind of has to do the things, like, obviously, of course, IVF is a choice, attending a fertility clinic is a choice, but you have to do the injections, you have to do the blood work, you have to do the ultrasounds, you have to go through procedures. The male partner really needs to make the decision, needs to make the choice to be a part of it and to sort of take a more active role in a way. And it takes maybe a little bit more effort because you're not being told, okay, you have to come for blood work, you have to come for ultrasound. You have to step up a little bit, I guess, and to sort of make yourself that active role. You have to really figure out how you can put yourself there and be in that situation so that you can be in the room, essentially, when the big things are happening, and to really be an active part. That is, I would imagine, can be really challenging, really tough. For any person who's undergoing a medical treatment of some sort, it can be really hard to know how to support that person, even when you really, really want to. What I love about this, and I'm hearing, is that it's really about communication and keeping those lines of communication open and trying to do things together, which is just fantastic. And I think that that's really the start, I would imagine, how to support your partner, but also how to support any person who's undergoing some big, scary medical thing, right?
Yeah, I think communication is key. And I can understand, like we talked about before, men really brought up to suppress our emotions. And we've talked about why that may happen even more on IVF journey. And I can understand from a male perspective when you're hurting and holding down all your emotions, maybe part of that protective barrier is distancing yourself from things, right? But when you do focus on that communication, like we mentioned before, and express your emotions a little bit and get on the same page, that can open up the space for you to be there more for your partner and be more actively involved, because it is hard to do that when you're suppressing. Communication ties everything very, very nicely together. And listening to what your partner needs. Another thing I learned along the way was, as men, we always hear, we want to fix things. We want to make things better. And women come to us with a problem and we jump in with a solution. And that's not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to listen and support. So I've got, 3 older sisters. So I've heard this, right? So that's what I was doing through the journey. I'd listen and I'd support and I wouldn't solution. Finally, one day she said, "No, Tom, sometimes I need you to solution. Sometimes I'm saying these things because I need the reassurance of everything that has happened and everything that is going to happen, what the plan is, and how everything is probably going to go right. Sometimes I do need the solution." And I wasn't asking that. I was assuming that she just wanted emotional support all the time. So that was good communication on her part and helped a lot. So then there are times she'd say, "What's the plan?" She was more specific with her request as well after that, or what's happening. And then I outline everything for her. This is everything we've done. This is everything that's going to happen. And that would help contain her anxiety. But communication is really, really, really important. So if there are some men out there holding back a little bit, I urge you just to open up. You don't have to open up everything. Every little bit you open up will be like a ray of sunshine for your partner and help her so much. You have no idea.
And even just asking the question, what do you need from me at this point? Like what can I do to make your life better? It might sound like quote unquote a stupid question because some men may assume I should know the answer to this question or, what a stupid thing to ask. But really, sometimes even like I've been married for God, a lot of years, more than 10. And just this weekend, I'm tidying the house and I'm feeling overwhelmed. And my husband just comes and says, "What can I do for you right now in this moment?" And that alone, he just calmed me right down. And I was able to say, actually, I got it. I don't need to do anything. But just the fact that he saw my overwhelmed and came to me like willing to help, that alone, like it was so great and so important. And I think that communication is a two-way street. I know sometimes in this journey, because women are going through it, and I know I did this, I also suppressed my emotions. I also felt like I'm a fertility specialist. I should know this. I can power through. I don't need anyone, And I wasn't very good about saying what I needed. And that goes to my friends, that goes for my husband. So it's definitely a two-way street. And we had this conversation in the podcast before. Women should advocate for what they want and actually say it. And men need to listen more, or not just men, but society, partners, friends, parents-in-law. They need to really listen and meet the patient where they're at.
And along those lines of it all being a two-way street, I would actually venture to say that as a woman, when my husband comes to me and he shows me emotions and I'm able to support those emotions and support him, help him provide that emotional support, I actually feel better. And I actually feel like I am doing something good for him. And I feel more connected as well. So it's not that showing emotions is always burdening the other person, right? Because yes, although in the world of fertility, it's the female partner who's undergoing the poking and the prodding, we also want to feel effective. Like the woman also wants to feel effective. We also want to feel like we're doing good for our partners as well. Like we're not just the burden, if you will, the emotional, taker in the relationship. So sometimes actually showing those emotions, telling us you're sad, you're upset, you need whatever, can make us feel, or at least can make me feel more effective, more important, more valued, and a better partner. So it really is this beautiful cycle, right? That when you're able to share in a relationship, whether it's romantic partners or friendship or parents, family, whatever, that's a really beautiful thing. Like I always feel so privileged when people come to me and are able to share their emotions with me. I feel like, wow, like I'm so glad that you feel close enough to me, that our relationship matters enough to you, that I'm the person that you're turning to for emotional support. That's actually a really beautiful thing as well.
Tom, you have given men listening to this podcast, and hope that many men listen to this podcast, some concrete examples on how to support your partner in a fertility journey. Can you do the same for fertility specialists and fertility clinics? How can we do better for the male partner?
I know a lot of professionals in the clinics have, talked about it and thought about it and wondered how we can help support partners more, which is great. And I do believe it's probably hard to get a group of male partners into a room together, right? So that's probably difficult to do, but having, I think, more basic resources or liaisons for them. If you can get a group of women together, either online or live, encourage them to bring their partners and maybe have a little breakout for the men, where the men can talk about their feelings with each other, vent, be pissed off, be angry at this process, right? Express their emotions as a little aside and bring them back in. I think that would be great. It might, take more outreach to get the men involved. You might have to drag them in a bit and get the wives to help you do that, as opposed to the women who I think just naturally come together. But it's more outreach. I also think maybe having a couples counselor as part of the clinic service would be great, because everything's a loss, right? Even if you go through a successful cycle, there are losses there on both sides of the partnership. And when there are losses, both sides are feeling it. And that can just help them to communicate better together and express more with each other. And some couples may go off and do that on their own, but probably not enough do. But yeah, it requires a bit more of a pull, I think, if you're willing to do
Yeah,
that.
I know for me it's hard because, as you probably notice, I'm a big hugger. I love hugging my patients and touching them and putting their hand on their shoulder and, when the embryo transfer, holding hands. So that's a lot of how I express connection with my patients. And especially when the time comes and they get their ultrasound, and the good news is usually a really big physical, tender moment there. And it's kind of weird to do it with a male because I don't know what the religious is. I don't know how the comfort level with the physical touch from a female. So I know for me, that's hard because I do love hugging my female patients. And I don't remember if I hugged you or not, to be honest, but I remember you were in the elevator.
You did.
I did. Okay.
Yeah, you asked, and then you
Okay.
did, right? So you can
Okay.
always ask.
Okay, good.
Comes
Thank
back to
you.
communication, right? Just ask. I was more than happy to hug you, but I was giving you to your space
Yeah.
because
Yeah, true.
you
Yeah.
know my wife is very expressive and loves
Yes.
hugs, and
Yes.
it's very emotional,
Yeah,
which I love
those
about
two are those two are a match made in heaven, actually.
her. Yes, you did make a comment and ask if you could hug me, and you did. So that was nice. But even early on in the process, no patients go into this realizing how long and painful it can be. Everybody's all hopeful and optimistic, and this is going to be it. I'm trying to remember back to the very beginning of the journey, if there were like separate resources for the partners. There may have been, like, was there a book, even a booklet or information just for, you're the partner, this is for you. This is what you're going through. This is what you might be feeling, problems you might have. We know it's natural for you not to communicate your emotions. This is how it could be helpful, right? Everything we're talking about today, it could be communicated to the male partners up front. Hopefully this goes really well and there's no pain involved, but sometimes it takes a couple of cycles. There's too many variables. So here's your get started handbook. And then, we have someone, whether it's someone in the community or someone at the clinic or just a volunteer, who can reach out to them by email or something, especially after a loss. How are you doing? We've heard from Alexi. Tom, how are you doing? Right? Even just reaching out would go a long way. And again, opens up people to expressing those emotions at home, outside home, and feel cared for and supported. Even if they don't respond, they probably feel more cared for and seen.
I remember one of my other big hugs. It was another patient, long journey, and she's finally succeeded. And I gave her a big hug again. And then when I turned over, the male partner was sitting in a chair sobbing. Like he was just sobbing. I guess just being present in this moment, and through tears, he just said thank you, but he couldn't even get the words out. And that really stayed with me because, again, I probably kind of ignore him a lot throughout the journey and pay so much attention to her. And then I remember I knew that she was in the room with the nurse with an ultrasound. So my team says so and so is in the room and her ultrasound is good. So I walked him and I immediately went for her and gave her a big hug. I didn't even notice he was there, to be honest, because I was so excited for her. I guess I keep saying it, but I really want to make more of an effort to include the male partners as well. You guys are easy to ignore sometimes. So thank you so much for doing this and not letting us ignore you.
I mean, I think that this podcast episode is really going to be an incredible resource. And I'm going to try and convince all of my male patients coming through to have a listen to this episode and to hear your words, because I think that hearing from somebody who has gone through a similar journey is the most powerful way to connect with someone, as you mentioned. And same with your social media channel, with your Instagram channel. But I guess when you were starting on your journey, there was no podcast episode that we know of. There was no male fertility, maybe a social media kind of account to follow that I know of. So how did you start this journey to get to the point of where you are now?
I just had to. There aren't any resources. There's no one you can talk to except hopefully your spouse. You just have to get through as best you can. It wasn't always pretty. I try and take care of myself, right? You need to get the stress out somehow. So yeah, you want to exercise and all those regular things, but then at the same time, I'm probably binge eating and putting on 20 pounds because I'm stressed, right? So it can be not healthy. And then the weaker I get, the less I can support, right? And then I feel bad about that. It's never balanced. I wouldn't say I'd figured anything out, but I just tried my best to be there. And there were times when I would say, I need space. I need something. Like there was one day in particular, where it just seemed like this journey was all we were talking about all day, every day, day after day after day after day after day after. And I get it. My wife likes to ruminate, likes to repeat, likes to go over things again and again. So I'm happy to do that with her. But there was one day where I just said, I need 24 hours. Please give me 24 hours where we talk about anything in the world, but we do not talk about this. I need it. I need 24 hours. And she respected that and gave me it. And then the next day she was like kind of tentatively saying some things. I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm good. I got my 24 hours. Because it was not just the break of speaking about it, but it was also, she supported me, right? She supported what I think was the beginning of me opening up to what I needed, right? And she supported me and that felt good and it made her feel good. And I saw that and that helped me open up more. I don't think that there's a magic bullet. There are certain therapies I go through, to try and get emotions out of my body, simple little exercises and more complex things. But there were times over those 6 years where I was not in a good place, right? And you have to do your best to get through it.
Absolutely. So, Tom, we've talked a lot in this episode. And again, I think it's going to be a great resource. Do you have final sort of words of wisdom to leave our audience with, in particularly male partners trying to support their fertility partners through fertility journey? What would be your parting words of wisdom for them?
And my parting words of trying to be wisdom, you do have to take care of yourself so you can support your partner. And part of taking care of yourself is expressing those emotions. And part of taking care of yourself is being involved. If you're not involved, you're just going to feel more distant, more separated. Throughout this journey, it's been very humbling for me as a male partner, because I mentioned before, we do like to go in, we like to fix things and have solutions. And through the entire journey, you're seeing your partner go through pain and procedures and heartache. And no matter what you do or how hard you try, you cannot fix it. So you feel, kind of useless on the sidelines. So jump in as much as you can. It makes you feel more useful. Express your emotions. That helps you get some out. And that gives you the space to support your partner better, which is what I think we all really want to do. And as far as listening to the podcast, I suggest if the men aren't listening to it, get together as a couple. The woman can say, hey, let's watch this podcast, watch it for a bit and pause it and say, hey, they just mentioned this. Is this what you're feeling? Is this how you feel? Are you having trouble with this? And that can get that communication going. And I think it could be an awesome tool to help male partners open up and feel more involved.
Thank you so much. Another thing that I notice as well is sometimes a couple comes to me and, for example, we're having a discussion about whether to transfer one embryo or two embryos, whether to do PGT or not do PGT. And they're sitting there together and going over things. And then, I say, okay, what's going to be the decision? And the female partner would turn to the male partner and the male partner would say, well, it's your decision. It's your body. It's whatever you want.
And classic,
right?
Classic.
Right.
Yes.
And I get where they're coming from. They want to respect their body autonomy. They know that this is deeply personal. They want to be supportive. But it really is a joint decision. And I could see the annoyance when they go back and say, well, no, this is our decision. Whether I put 1 or 2 embryos, it would affect both of us. Maybe I shouldn't speak for all women, but generally speaking, I think when we're asking our partners, because we really do want the partner to make the decision with us, because it can go really well, it can go really poorly. And the last thing that we want is to have the burden of, I decided to put 2 embryos. I decided not to do PGT. I decided not to do IVF and do IUI, or do IUI and not do IVF and whatnot. It's very important that the decision really comes together. So you both carry the joy of making a decision that worked well, or you both carry the sense of responsibility when you've gone through something and the decision didn't work out well. Do you have some thoughts about that?
Absolutely. Yes, I always wanted to be involved in decisions. I would educate myself as much as I could about what was going on and the medications and the choices we were facing, and we would discuss them. My wife knows a lot more about it than I do, but I tried to ramp up as much as possible. So after a while, you know what's coming up and what the decisions would be. So, should we get PGT tested, or should we not, or should we transfer multiple embryos, or which embryo should we select? We've got, this really good embryo. We've got one we're not sure. We've got one that's not looking so good genetically, right? Because we were testing for a while. And sometimes we did have very differing opinions on that. And I would express my opinion, and she would express hers, and we would discuss it, especially when it came to selecting an embryo. Or what often came up was, we've got 1 or 2 embryos left. Should we transfer those, or should we do a retrieval so we have more just in case, and then do the transfer, right? That came up a lot.
These are
And
big decisions. Yeah.
they are big decisions, and I
Yeah.
had some strong opinions on some of those. But I would always say, this is what I feel. This is why I feel it strongly. In the end, you are the person who has to go through the procedure. So you can pull out a trump card if you want to, but she never did. We discussed it. And especially when it came to like retrieval versus transfers, some of those decisions went my way for good reasons. But some of the other decisions went her ways, and I acquiesced. But it was always a joint decision.
And I think that's what's important, because I get very irritated when they go, oh, there you go, it's your body.
Yeah, you need to be involved.
Yeah,
You need to be
exactly.
involved with your partner. You need to be involved with the process. You need to know what's going on.
Even I went through that, because when I went through fertility, I'm also a fertility specialist. But I still wanted to be like, this is what PGT is, these are the pros and the cons. Let's make a decision together. And I know it's kind of artificial because of the difference in knowledge base that we had. I mean, my partner is also a physician, but not a fertility specialist. So he felt like, how can I possibly help you make a decision when you know more than I do? Is literally your job. But I still wanted him to be involved in these decisions. And I still wanted to explain things to him the way I would explain to any of my patients, so that he'd be like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing this, and this is why we're not. I think that would resonate with a lot of couples, that it is a joint decision. And as much as sometimes men don't want to say anything because they just want their partner to do whatever they want, it has a way of being supported. It's not that supportive when you're not really involved in the decision. And that goes also when you're trying to pick a restaurant or where to go on vacation.
Really about sharing the mental load.
Right. Yeah.
When I turn to my partner and I say, well, what do you think? I'm literally telling you what I want. Meaning, I want to make this decision together. Like, I am vocalizing what I want to see, not the outcome, but I'm vocalizing how I want this process to go. Like you, it grinds my gears. Oh my goodness. I don't handle it well. You just imagine my husband listening to this. Honey, when I want to make a decision with you together, it means I want you to make a decision with me.
Not just a yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, involved communication. That's what it's all about. Just because you can't do everything or fix everything, don't do nothing. Doing nothing is not supportive.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
That's the best part.
That sentence just summarizes everything that we have talked about today. Thank you so much for joining us. We would love to have you back with your partner to talk about the fertility journey as a couple. But, Dr. Garcia mentioned this at the beginning of the episode, and I just want to reiterate that it's true. Like, we trained as gynecologists. We have spent many, many years with female patients, working with female patients. And that kind of does become a bit of our primary focus. And so I'm certainly guilty of it as well. I don't want anyone to think that I'm innocent of ignoring the male patient, maybe not making them feel as heard or as seen as I may be focused on for the female patients. And it's something that I vow that I'm going to work on.
Yeah, we can feel pretty useless.
Yeah, we all have times where we feel useless.
I think we can all do better. They can do better, but we can do better too as physicians.
Absolutely. And that's a wrap for today's Superhumans.
If you're looking to connect, get social with us. Follow us on YouTube and Instagram at My Fertility Podcast or visit us online at myconfertility.com. And don't forget, follow, subscribe, and share your favorite episode.
Thanks for listening to My Fertility Podcast and for being a vital part of our community. We know you've got this.
We're signing off until next Tuesday.
If you found this episode of My Fertility Podcast helpful, please take a moment to head over to the review section and leave us your thoughts. Your reviews and comments are incredibly valuable to us and help guide future episodes. We also welcome you to direct your questions to info@myfertilitypodcast.com.
My Fertility Podcast is produced by Rabbit Media Inc. in conjunction with Dr. Garcia and Dr. Weiss. Music from Mix Kit Raising Me Higher by Ajay Stelino. My Fertility Podcast is not intended to replace any type or variation thereof professional medical, health, or legal advice, nor should the content be taken as medical advice. Please contact your primary healthcare professional regarding any medical questions you may have. The information presented in this podcast is based on the knowledge and understanding of the host at the time of recording. Medical knowledge is constantly evolving, and new research may change the understanding of health-related topics. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, we do not guarantee the completeness, accuracy, or timeliness of the content. The views expressed in this podcast by guests are not those of the host or the management. This podcast is not intended to impose any type of discrimination. My Fertility Podcast and its management are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from the use of this podcast.